at the lot. Told him 12 swat. Busting all the bells out the box. I just hit a lick with the box. Had to put the stick in the box.
An explosion. So let's find out what's happening with Wilbur in this explosion that's supposed to happen. All right, here we go. Day after day, the spider waited head down for an idea to come to her. Hour by hour, and she sat motionless, deep in thought, having promised Wilbur that she would save his life, and she was determined to keep her promise. Charlotte was naturally patient. She knew from experience that if she waited long enough, a fly would come to her web. She felt sure that if thought long enough about Wilbur's problem, an idea would come to her head. Finally, one morning in the middle of July, the idea came. Why, how perfectly simple, she said to herself. There's no way to save Wilbur's life. The way to save Wilbur's life is to play a trick on Zuckerman. If I can fool a bug, thought Charlotte, I surely can fool man. People are not as smart as bugs. Wilbur walked into his yard just that moment. What are you thinking about, Charlotte? He asked. I was just thinking, said the spider, that people are very gullible. What's gullible mean? Easy to fool, said Charlotte. That's a mercy, replied Wilbur, as he lay down in the shade of his fence and went to sleep. The spider, however, stayed wide awake, gazing affectionately at him and making plans for his future. Summer was half gone. She knew she didn't have time. That morning, just as Wilbur fell asleep, Avery Arable wandered into the Zuckerman's front yard, followed by Fern. Avery carried a live frog in his hand. Fern had a crown of daisies in her hair. The children ran for the kitchen. Just in time for a piece of blueberry pie, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Look at my frog, said Avery, placing the frog on the drain board. Placing the frog on the drain board. And holding out his hand for pie. Take that thing out of here, said Mrs. Zuckerman. He's hot, said Fern. He's almost dead. That frog? He is not, said Avery. He lets me scratch him between his eyes. The frog jumped and landed in Mrs. Zuckerman's dishpan full of soapy water. You're getting your pie on you, said Fern. Can I look for your eggs in the hen house, Aunt Edith? Run outdoors, both of you, and don't bother the hens. It's getting all over everything, shouted Fern. His pie is all over his front. Come on, frog, cried Avery. He scooped up the frog. The frog kicked, splashing soapy water into the blueberry pie. Another crisis, groaned Fern. Let's swing the swing, said Avery. The two children ran to the barn. Mr. Zuckerman had the best swing in the county. It was a swing, a single long piece of heavy rope tied to the beam over the north door. At the bottom end of the rope was a fat knot to sit on. It was arranged so that you could swing without being pushed. The kids climbed on the ladder to the hayloft. Then, holding the rope, you could stood at the edge and look down, and you were scary and dizzy. Then you straddled the knot, and that is, acted as a seat. Then you got up all your nerves and took a deep breath and jumped. For a second it seemed to be falling on the barn floor below, but then the sudden of the rope began to catch you, and you still would sail through the barn door going a mile a minute. And with the wind whistling in your eyes and ears and hair, then you would zoom upward into the sky and look at the clouds, and the rope would twist and turn with the rope, and you would drop down, down, down out of the sky and come sailing back into the barn, into the hayloft. Then sail out again. Not quite as far this time. Then and again, not so quite so high. Then again, then in again, then out again, then in again. Then you'll jump off and fall and let everybody else try it. Mothers from miles around worried about the Zuckerman swing. They feared that some children would fall off, but no children ever did. Children almost hang onto that thing tighter than their parents will ever think. But Avery put the frog in his pocket and climbed into the hayloft. The last time I swung in this swing, I almost crashed into the barn swallow, he yelled. Take that frog out, ordered Fern. Avery straddled the rope and jumped. He sailed out the door, the frog and all, into the sky, frog and all. He sailed back into the barn. Your tongue is purple, screamed Fern. So is yours, cried Avery, out again with the frog. I have hay inside my dress. It itches, called Fern. Scratch it, yelled Avery, as he sailed back. It's my turn, said Fern. Jump off. Fern's got all the itch, sang Avery. When he jumped off, he threw the swing into his sister. She shut her eyes tight and jumped. She felt a dizzy drop, then supporting lift of the swing. When she opened her eyes, she was looking into the blue sky about to fly back into the door. They took turns for an hour. When the children grew tired of the swing, they went back towards the pasture to pick wild raspberries and ate them. Their tongues turned from purple to red. Fern bit into the raspberry that had a bad-tasting bug inside of it and got discouraged. Avery found an empty candy box and put his frog in it. The frog seemed tired after the morning in the swing. The children walked slowly up to the barn. They, too, were tired and hardly had enough energy to walk. Let's build a tree house, suggested Avery. I want to live in a tree with my frog. I'm going to visit Wilbur, Fern announced. They climbed to the fence in the lane and walked lazily toward the pig pen. Wilbur heard them coming up. Avery noticed a spider web, and coming closer, he saw Charlotte. Hey, look at that big spider, he said. It's tremendous. Leave it alone, commanded Fern. You've got a frog. Isn't that enough? It's a fine spider. I'm going to capture it, said Avery. He took the cover off the candy box, then he picked up a stick. I'm going to knock that old spider into the box, he said. Wilbur's heart almost stopped when he saw what was going on. That might be the end of Charlotte. If the boys succeeded in catching her. You stop it, Avery, cried Fern. Avery put one leg on the fence of the pig pen. When he just was about to raise the stick to hit Charlotte, when he lost his balance. He swayed and toppled and landed on the edge of Wilbur's trough. The trough tipped up and came down with a slam. The goose egg was right underneath. There was a dull explosion of the egg, broke into a horrible smell. Fern screamed. Avery jumped to his feet. The air filled with a terrible gases of the smell of the rotten egg. Templeton, who had been resting in his home, scuttled away into the barn. Good night, screamed Avery. Good night. What a stink. Let's get out of here. Fern was crying. She held her nose and ran towards the house. Avery ran after her, holding his nose. Charlotte felt greatly relieved to see him go. It had been a narrow escape. Later on in the morning, the animals came up to the pasture, the sheep, the lamb, the gander, the goose, and the 7 gooselings. There were many complaints about the awful smell, and Wilbur had to tell a story over and over again about how the arable boy had tried to capture Charlotte and how the smell of the broken egg drove him away just in time. It was the rotten goose egg that saved Charlotte's life, said Wilbur. The goose was proud of her share in the adventure. I'm delighted that the egg never hatched, she gabbled. Templeton, of course, was miserable over the loss of his beloved egg, but he couldn't resist boasting. It pays to save things, he said in his surly voice. A rat never knows when something is going to come in handy. I never throw anything away. Well, said one of the lambs, the whole business is all and well for Charlotte. But what about the rest of us? The smell is unbearable. Who wants to live in a barn that is perfumed with rotten egg? Don't worry, you'll get used to it, said Templeton. He sat up and pulled wisely at his long whiskers, then crept away to pay a visit to the dump. When Lurvy showed up at lunchtime carrying a pail for Wilbur, he stopped short paces of the pig pen. He sniffed the air and made a face. "What a thunder," he said, setting the pail down and picked up the stick that Avery had dropped, pried up on a trough. "Rats," he said. "Whew! I might have known a rat would make a nest under the trough. How I hate a rat." Lurvy dragged Wilbur's straw across the yard and kicked some dirt into the rat's nest, burying the broken egg and all the Templeton's possessions. Then he picked up the pail. Wilbur stood in the trough, drooling with hunger. Lurvy poured the slop creamy down the pig's eyes and ears. Wilbur grunted. He gulped and sucked and gulped and making swishing and swishing and swashing noises, anxiously to get everything at once. It was delicious milk, skim milk, wheat middlings, leftover pancakes, half a donut, and rind of summer squash, 2 pieces of stale toast, a third of a ginger snap, a fish tail, 1 orange peel, several noodles from noodle soup, the scum off a cup of cocoa, the ancient jelly roll, a strip of paper from the lining of a garbage pail, and a spoonful of raspberry jello. Wilbur ate heartily. He planned to leave half the noodle and a drop of milk for Templeton. Then he remembered that the rat had been useful in saving Charlotte's life and was trying to save his life. So he left a whole noodle instead of a half. Now that the broken egg was buried, the air cleared and the barn smelled good again. That afternoon passed and the evening came. Shadows lengthened. The cool and kindly breath of evening entered through the doors and the windows. Astride her web, Charlotte sat moodily eating a horsefly, thinking about the future. After a while, she bestirred herself. She descended to the center of the web, and there she began to cut some of her lines. She worked slowly but steadily while the other creatures drowsed. None of the others, not even the goose, noticed that she was at work. Deep in a soft bed, Wilbur snoozed. Over their favorite corner, the goslings whistled at night song. Charlotte tore quiet a section of her web, leaving an opening space in the middle, and she started weaving something that took place of threads that had removed. When Templeton got back from the dump around midnight, the spider was still at work. I wonder what was she doing that night trying to figure out that. Don't forget, go to Google Classroom, finish all your Google Classrooms. Make sure that you are, remember our moral focus is compassion. And I will be back. Don't forget to comment, like. Peace. Bye.